only going to last about 5 years. And, and lo and behold, 15 years later, here I am. So I've kind of done my, I currently work at Wyndham Destinations, which is a vacation ownership company, one of the largest in the world. Um, they, uh, they're based out of Orlando, and I'm a creative director over the digital products there. We have a smaller team. They went through a big digital transformation a couple years ago and have been kind of reinventing what their digital team is and trying to move into a more enterprise design workflow and trying to build the teams around that. So me and some of our team are part of that kind of change. So we have a couple of UI UX designers, a UX manager, some UX writers now that have joined our team. So we're slowly trying to build our team there. Now that's kind of taken a little bit of a break. And there was a lot of growth in the last couple of years, and then kind of now with COVID, it's slowed down quite a bit. Um, but yeah, before that, I've worked at Disney, at Universal, in a senior role in the UI UX or product teams there. And previously to that, Full Sail University and Houghton Mifflin Harcourt. So I've been doing this for a long time. I'm going to try not to age myself too much with this talk, but yeah, that's kind of my background here. I've got a wife and two kids that are. I'm going to try and hope not to have them scream in the background while we're doing this talk. But I make no promises. So
That's all par. It's all
it's
par
gonna
for
be
the
dinner
course at
time.
this point. It's
Yeah,
all
it's gonna be dinner time. So who knows? It could be great. It could be terrible. I have no idea.
cool. Cool. So well, we're super excited to have you, and I'm super excited about this particular talk because, of course, COVID is impacting all of us in very personal ways, but also very professional ways. So thank you so much for joining us today. Just a heads up to everyone, I will be recording this. So if you'd like access to it later, you can take a look at the Meetup event page and you will have access to it at that time. Now, Ricardo, are you looking to have questions during the presentation or do you want to kind of talk and then do questions at the end?
Yeah, I'll probably talk and do questions and conversation at the end. I'd love to kind of hear where people are at and definitely interested in seeing people's perspectives on what's going on right now. But I think I'm gonna probably lose my train of thought, so I might just kind of wait till the end to kind of do that.
Okay, sounds good. All right, do you want to kick us off?
Yeah, sure can. Let me
Great.
share my screen. Is this the? Oh, let me quickly start out at the beginning instead of at the end. I was doing a practice run before, so sorry.
It's all good.
Yeah. All right. So let me go here. Sharing screen has failed. Let me try that again. Sorry, it seems to be going off on its own, so I'm going to start it over.
Okay. Let me know if there's anything I can do to help.
No, just all right. I'm gonna just start sharing my presentation from here, and then I will try that again. All right. So, all right, can you all see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Okay, perfect. All right, so let me get started. So yeah, as you know, I'm Ricardo de Azua. Kind of talked a little bit about myself already, so I'm going to kind of skip through this. But yeah, creative director of digital products over at Wyndham Destinations. Um, I've taken kind of a non-traditional approach to my career, or non that my trajectory has been a little bit all over the place. So I started in print design when my career started in 2004 four, 3 or 4. So I started at Home Mifflin Harcourt at the time. It was called Harcourt School Publishing. It's a publishing company, so it was more print design, packaging design, and things like that. So from there, I did full-time freelance, and that's where I kind of started doing web design for client work. Really starting to understand digital design, but not really UX design or UI design. It was really the beginning of that for me. And from there, I moved over to Full Sail, and at Full Sail, I was working on online advertising and landing pages and emails and things of that nature. In a senior role. And then really there was a change in our team, and I was brought into the web team, and that is really where because of one of our UX designers there, I was able to really learn and understand the importance of human-centered design and really understand design thinking and really implement agile methodologies just in the way we were working at the time. Really diving into that, and it really sparked something in me to really delve deeper into it. And so I started taking courses and really educating myself to be able to really design and build products that really take the user as the focus. So so from there, I was lucky enough to move over to Universal and Disney, which really broadened my perspective, and really I was able to work on enterprise level products, working with really talented UI UX teams, product teams. Collaborating a lot more with larger development teams, really understanding how to design at scale. So that really kind of I would say was really my formative years, really creating that kind of understanding, and really understanding what my focus really was, and it was really UX design. So I was lucky to have those opportunities there, and really soak up a lot of information from really talented and smart UX and product designers and those organizations. And with that, I was able to leverage to my current role, which is at Wyndham Destinations, working on a lot of their products. They've gone through a big digital transformation the last couple of years, and really focused on their legacy. A lot of their products were really legacy, not really built to grow and scale, not really built for their users, really just designed in a bubble, and created in a bubble. So really a lot of work had started even before I got there to move away from that, and to move their products into more of that scalable component-based products that can be scaled throughout all their products. So they have a lot of different vacation ownership companies under that umbrella. So we work on a bunch of different products, and right now that is really what we're doing. So pre-COVID, we were working on really our flagship product is Club Wyndham, which is our largest portfolio of resorts, with and so our ownership there is really important. So we had already been the company had already been working on a redesign of the just general public facing website, that was already in flight, and then what really was the crown jewel, or kind of the most important part, was the owner side. So the dashboard, being able to have a mobile friendly site that owners could book, go on vacation easier through their device without having to call guest services or booking, just because they were having such a hard time with the legacy products that we had. So this was really what was happening in March. We were launching this product. We were getting ready to really see a boom in our business because of that. We were already seeing that kind of uptick before COVID really hit and everything shut down. And so, um, I think what really changed for us was kind of our philosophy. So we were already moving towards working agile. We were already working agile per se, but really this the impact of COVID caused our team really to focus to work in a very agile way, to really not wait and collaborate more. Just really changed the way that we were collaborating, working together. We This quote came from an interview I watched with Brian Chesky, who is the founder and CEO of Airbnb, and he was talking basically about the same thing, the impact that COVID has had on their business. They were one of the, if not the darling of the startup world. And they were doing phenomenally, and in a few weeks time their business dropped 80%. So that is a something astronomical that I think most of us couldn't even imagine. So his philosophy was speed equals survival. You have to act decisively and quickly, make some difficult decisions, really difficult decisions, and really be able to come together as a team and work quickly and in a way that you can implement these decisions to uh, um, to make positive change for you to survive. Really, for them it was imperative. So when you look at their site now or their app now compared to before COVID, you can see a lot of that kind of innovation happening where they're seeing obviously less people traveling to big cities, so they're bubbling up a lot more of that nature travel or beach travel, travel that people are more comfortable with. They're showing you results for places that are closer to you, driving distance, because they're seeing that user behavior changing. They're seeing a lot more people doing driving trips versus flying internationally. So a lot more. So they're reacting to that change in user behavior, and they're seeing this as a complete change in the way their business is going to be for the time being and possibly forever. So, you know, international travel will return and things like that, but having that kind of understanding of their users and understanding of how everything is changing and being able to react to that, I think it has been imperative for them and for even my team. Um, so what are the biggest question marks right now for that I've been observing and kind of, I've been doing a lot of research on this and had a lot of interest in this before even this talk. But just seeing, who are the biggest question marks right now, and it really is traditional mom and pop businesses and tech averse companies that have not really invested in digital first strategies, in UI UX, in really understanding data, and using that to leverage their businesses. So people that are kind of stuck in the ways that things have always been, aversion to really move forward in a digital way. And so those are really the companies that are struggling and will be struggling for a while. So without having that understanding that now every business is a technology business. Now you have to have a technology, some sort of technology incorporated within your business, and hopefully being a large part of it. So a lot of these companies are now scrambling to create e-commerce platforms or a digital strategy because they didn't have one. And in the reality of things, now that they're scrambling, they're going to probably not get the best results that they're looking for. Um, you know, so so who's thriving? The companies that are doing well, are obviously a lot of companies that we're familiar with, but companies that have digital first strategies, mature product design teams. They implement design thinking in their workflow, into their decision making. So these companies are doing well because of that, but also some of them are doing well because right place, right time. Um, so entertainment. Everyone knows everyone's watching a lot more Netflix, but internet usage is up 70% from before COVID, which is mind-boggling to me considering how much internet time we were doing before. Video game usage is up 46%. Business tools are completely have changed. Zoom has gone from 10 million users to 200 million users, and that happened within a month's time. So it's big changes in user behavior. Digital payments are another big change. It's a 50%. People don't want to take out their credit cards and swipe them. They'd rather do a tap with their either watch device, or just pay on their phone, through PayPal or something like that. Um, yeah.
Ricardo, I'm sorry to interrupt you. It looks like we're still on slide one. I just wanted to
Oh, I'm so
confirm.
sorry.
That's okay. I just wanted to confirm if we were seeing the right screen. That was all.
No, apparently not. I'm so sorry.
That's okay. We're looking at the Google Docs, like
Yeah,
kind of presenter
sorry.
organizing. There we go.
All
Perfect.
right.
Thank you.
All right. Oh, my apologies. Just
No worries. It happens.
but so food delivery, we're seeing a lot more, 70% up from last year, and that's obviously gonna probably taper back once things normalize. People are not going to always want to order food at home, but just seeing those changes in user behavior. Mirror is a home fitness company that sells hardware, that is basically software and hardware. That company sold to Lululemon for millions of dollars, just because Lululemon is now seeing a change in user behavior. People aren't going to the gym anymore. They want to have their own digital product now and their own hardware, so that they can basically change their business model. So it's not just retail now; it is also software and hardware. Um, so right now, why is this happening? Obviously, things are changing. Some of things are just happening because they're predicated on current needs. So current needs, delivery, things like that. But they also predicted a shift in consumer trends. So a lot of people have banked on food delivery, because larger cities have already shown that the convenience factor is very important to people. So focusing on those kind of future trends has really helped some of these companies bubble up and be able to really thrive in these times. But also, some of these companies really do put a giant focus on UX design, on agile methodology. They really do kind of put their design forward companies, their product forward companies, their tech forward companies. They really understand where the world is moving. It's just right now we've accelerated the process. So a lot of these big shifts are because everything's basically taken 5 years out of growth. So really understanding like innovation and tech forward growth has really made some of these companies really stand out right now as the companies that are doing well. Um, so I'm going to focus a little bit on travel, retail, and restaurants. So for no reason, just because it's really places that I have a little bit more understanding of, rather than other businesses that are not doing well, but also because these are some of the hardest hit ones. So there's been a massive change in these user behaviors of travel, retail, and restaurants. People aren't traveling, and when they are, it's different. It's completely different than it used to be. You used to hop on a flight, you can go to New York, spend a weekend, and come back. Now no one's doing that. traveling abroad. That's not happening for the time being. Um, and so that's these industries are probably going to be changing forever. Um, they've been rocked by the coronavirus, and they really have to kind of change their business and change the way they're doing things to be able to survive. So I think good UX has the ability to help, bubble these business up, certain businesses in these industries up. So with travel, I've been focusing on travel in my career a good amount. So there's a few ways that the industry can set itself up for success when travelers are ready to return. So when travelers are ready to come back, having certain things in place and kind of changing the way your business is run by understanding their needs, by empathizing with what they're going through and what their needs are now compared to what they were 6 months ago. So really kind of being able to pivot and change the way they're doing things. In my company, I'm going to use one of our examples. I think that we've done a great job of kind of getting ready for reopening. And when things were reopening, we saw a big boost in our business. Soon after the shutdown, our teams, certain teams in our organization got together and began working on a program called Vacation Ready to make people comfortable with staying in our resort. So a lot of it was understanding what are the things that need to happen for people to be able to travel again, to stay at a resort and feel comfortable, to be able to enjoy themselves and not feel this fear of infection or just unknown, the unknown of you going on vacation and what that's going to be like. So implementing some cleaning protocols was a giant thing. They partnered with Ecolabs, which is a company that works with not hotels, with hospitals to clean, sanitize, and so they went to a level that might have been thought of as overkill 6 months ago, but now it is what our users are really expecting when they want to travel. They want to feel that a place is clean, that it's sanitized, that there are less options for infection. Implementing social distancing, contactless check-in, which is something a lot of hotels are doing or hotel chains are doing to really make people feel comfortable. Mask requirements. And then another thing was these keyless entry wristbands. So every guest would get these wristbands when they book their vacation, being able to check in without even having to stop at the check-in counter, going straight to your room, being able to open the door without having to touch anything. And that, I think, is just those little steps are really kind of using that empathy and using that design thinking to come up with solutions for a problem. And right now we're with many problems to deal with, and I think really leaning in on our kind of best practices and our skill set is really what's going to help. In retail, this is, everyone knows that the large e-commerce platforms are doing really well. So, the Amazons, the Targets, Walmarts, they had these platforms in place. They had the user base in place. People are very comfortable using that, and they're ubiquitous. You know who they are. You know how to use the apps, and you feel comfortable with that experience. But small to medium retailers are really struggling. They make up 40% of the economy, and they're not ready for this. A lot of them were not ready for this. So in the clothing industry, there's an 89% drop in their sales. And one of the biggest challenges is really adapting their businesses to this new remote/digital environment. So, a lot of them are used to having that foot traffic or the or just local clientele that are comfortable and know who they are. They walk in, they purchase, or they whatever that is, whatever their business is, but they rely on that and they no longer can, at least for the time being and for the near future. Some small businesses have figured out a way to succeed by investing in an omni-channel approach, understanding how users are going from either social media or watching shows on YouTube, and from there getting them to either e-commerce flow or just learning more about a company and connecting with them and connecting with their story. Um, so um, so for me, this happened when I like everybody else, I'm on Instagram, just decompressing after a long day. I love coffee. I've been a fancy coffee drinker, as my friends like to call me, for a while. And so I must talk a lot about coffee because I started getting a lot of ads for coffee, whether it's subscription services or just general coffee roasters. And so, as a person that's been buying medium to okay grade coffee from the grocery store for a few months, I felt the need to buy something nicer. I'm drinking coffee every day. I'm making coffee every day. Might as well kind of get something different that I haven't had. And so I started doing research by clicking on the ads, going through the flows. And for some reason, the small mom and pop, not maybe not mom and pop, but smaller roaster out of New York really had a very clean and a very smooth transition from Instagram to their site to tell me their story, to then the booking. So that to me really connected with me as a user. They had a lot of the points that they make in their story, which I think is a huge part of UX, is really telling a story and using that storytelling to bring users along into purchasing or even just becoming loyal customers, but really understanding what that was. So for me, it was that understanding of, okay, they're very fresh. They from green to roast to delivery, it's less than a month, and it's coming from small farms in Colombia. So that hit a lot of checks for me personally, but it also for as a UX designer, I can clearly understand that they have a clear vision and they have a clear flow for their users, and really have a journey mapped out from Instagram, which is another platform, doesn't have anything to do with them, but from that platform to their product to then having that seamless transition to delivery. And so really understanding what that is and what that user really needs, to get what they're looking for. That's something that really I thought kind of piqued an interest in me. I'm like, wow, so this small business is able to figure it out. So not everybody is in this like swirl of not understanding digital products. So restaurants, a lot of us love eating out. I really miss going to restaurants. I it's really sad for me to order takeout from a good restaurant and get my food in a plastic container, and have to eat it with my children. But nothing against my children. Nothing against my children. Love my children, but there's something about going out with just adults and having a nice meal in a nice restaurant and really enjoying that experience. And so we're not going to see that for a little bit. I might eat outside when the weather gets nicer and COVID is not rampant. But in my area, there's a lot of local great restaurants, and I support them because not because their takeout food is amazing, but because I want them to still be around afterwards. So those are the types of places that I am ordering out from. And like many people, I'm doing Uber Eats, DoorDash, all the food delivery services, because of their convenience. But one thing that is that makes me take a step back is understanding that these companies are are pulling a little bit of profit from the small businesses, from these mom and pop restaurants that really need our support right now. And so, what would good UX do for these companies? And so for these companies, it would be, understanding that if they had a decent mobile product, a mobile website, an app, and invested in a user experience where they understood, okay, for curbside, we need to implement these measures. And a lot of a lot of restaurants are doing that, but some of them are slow to adapt. And so I feel like in the future there will have to be more of a focus on that, because they won't be able to survive with the fees that these other third party companies are charging them. So we either have to go analog and ring up a restaurant and go pick it up, or they're going to have to really understand how the world is changing and what they're going to have to do. So with all that said, I think it's a really opportune time for us as UX designers and people doing UX. I foresee an influx in UX jobs more than it has been in the last couple of years. I feel like it's going to exponentially grow just because of the need, that the understanding that now every company has to have digital product, a digital strategy to be able to survive and be able to thrive in the new world. A lot of people were putting off a lot of those things because they continue to have business and continue to have to have that income and the revenue coming in. But now that's not going to be the case. So being able to focus and be able to create that loyalty from their users by creating products that are built for them is going to be imperative. The scope of technology, I think, is going to be broadening exponentially. So I think a lot more people are going to be using technology to do things that they wouldn't have done before. So you see it now. I probably had ordered groceries once before COVID hit, and now I do it every time because I'd rather not go to the grocery store. So that user behavior is going to be changing for a while. Now I feel comfortable doing it. I might not do it every time, but I will probably continue doing that process. So I think user habits are always changing, but I think this has really kind of amped up that need for digital, a digital first mentality. There's always going to be the need for face-to-face business or face-to-face everything. I was just telling Michelle that before this, I was on a call with my son's school. It was we were having an open house, a digital open house, talking to the principal and seeing what measures they're taking and what this year is going to look like, at least for the time being. And so everything is really going to change, and it might not be the same after COVID's all gone. I think there's going to be a lot of changes. So I think it's up to us to I think there are a lot of opportunities for us as UX designers, but I think we have a lot of responsibility too. I think it's up to us to kind of raise our voices in our companies to preach and advocate for the user at all times. I think we have to challenge leadership when users are ignored or in favor of business decisions. So like when decisions are being made solely for profit, and which is difficult to do. I've been in that boat many times where you work for the company, you want your company to succeed, so you want the company to do well, but it should never be at the expense of the user. And when you really take the user into your thoughts every time you're making decisions, that profitability will happen. It'll just happen differently than what they're hoping. So really using our skill set, I think, to the fullest. We need to step up and make sure that we're being we're bringing every single tool that we have as UX designers, UX writers, and researchers to really push that forward, because there's going to be a lot of quick decisions that are going to be made. We're going to need to do a lot of testing to make sure that those are the right decisions, that we're quantifying our decisions based on that data that's coming back. So a lot of those things I think are going to be really, really important for us to do to be able to show our value to the business. But also, I think we also need to I think it's something that we're already doing, starting to do, but really focusing on inclusivity and accessibility. I think to me those are things that I'm passionate about, not just because I'm Hispanic, but also because I've seen, when I went to Universal, we did a big accessibility audit, and we worked with an accessibility team to really make sure that our site is, and our product was accessible to as many users as possible. Because the reality is, if you're ignoring 30% of users, those are 30% of users that are going to have a hard time. They're not going to have a good experience with your company or with your products, and that's going to reflect later on in your business. So really understanding that, and now even more, I think really. I was listening to this Nielsen Norman video about how now more seniors and older folks are having to interact with technology a lot more because of the situation they're in. They're some of the most vulnerable people, so they're really stuck at home. They really are, especially if they have health issues. They have to protect themselves even more. So using technology should be there, a way for them to be able to access the world. But the reality is, a lot of times our interfaces tend to be more complicated than they should be, and make it harder for them to access that. So really understanding how inclusivity and being able to simplify our interfaces to make it easier for some of the most, our older folks, I think is going to be super important. And really understanding that, this is a lifeline for a lot of people. So we need to really be really open to changing kind of the way we're working as well. So I don't want to keep droning on and on about that, but I think good design is good business. A great quote from Thomas Watson. I think it's something that I've said before I was in the UX industry. I think that is a very important statement. I think it's a true statement. But to me, I think good UX design is better business. You're creating loyalty. You're creating a better self for your company in front of their users. You're building the product for them and not for anybody else. And so I want to kind of leave with that, kind of keep it a little bit on the shorter side so we have time to talk. But I think I'm really interested to hear how people are being affected by COVID. It's something that I've talked to all my colleagues about, whether it's at Wyndham or Disney or Universal. It really is interesting how their businesses are changing and how they're working differently. So yeah, I want to open up the floor for questions if anyone has any.
And I encourage everybody, as we're going through questions, to go ahead and hop on a video so we can see everybody. Cool. Thank you, Ricardo. I have a couple questions, actually. I'll start with one. When you were working on the accessibility with Universal, I'm curious what the mentality was. I'm hearing more and more this push to design for accessibility first, because the idea being that if you can design for all the various levels of accessibility, then anyone can use it, and therefore it's going to be easier for everyone in the long run. I think a lot of people, our company included, we typically focus on, let's just create something first, and then we'll like tack on accessibility, make sure that it works, and it'll meet, the contrast ratios and that kind of thing. But I'm kind of curious, you talked about working with your accessibility team. I was curious how that worked for you.
No, I think it opened my eyes to the reality that that accessibility isn't necessarily something that should be a second thought. You should kind of design from the beginning, because when you're looking at how even development is done on a website, having to redo that work is so time consuming and costly, because you can't tab navigate through a site, or your alt text is not included, so now you have to go back through all your visuals in a site, add alt text or remove alt text where it's not needed. That when you start from the beginning, it just makes the whole process more seamless, and the cleanup is a lot less. So yeah, I think definitely color contrast should, and font sizes should be something that we start with anyway, with hopefully starting with a design system or even a component library that has that kind of built in, so you don't have to kind of rethink it later. Making a lot of those kind of choices early eliminates a lot of those personal decisions of like, well, I like this blue better than that blue, or all those things. So starting with accessibility, I think, is super important, and it's something that I keep running into everywhere I go, is really trying to preach it a little bit more, and having people understand that, because I think it's 30% of users have some sort of disability, whether it's sight, motor, cognitive. So it is so many people. It's millions and millions of people that are out there that could be using a product but are having a hard time or can't. So I think it is definitely something that we should all be thinking about.
Sue, I know you have a great background in accessibility. I was curious if you had anything to add on that.
Uh,
And you could say no. I kind of blindsided you there.
Not that I can think of at the moment. I mean, I definitely think that usability and accessibility should be considered from the beginning of a product instead of retroactively doing it. But beyond that, that's the main thing I try to emphasize now more than ever.
Cool, thanks. I have questions, but if anybody else has questions, by all means. No? Okay. I was curious, thinking about your experience with kind of doing this no-touch digital solutions with Wyndham, and kind of like there was a picture of what I'm assuming are like the watch bracelet things, right?
Yeah.
So similar to what presumably Disney does, right, with their little
Yeah.
Disney
Right.
watch thing. I'm curious how you kind of think through that design process, because like, so many of us are used to like staring at a screen and moving pixels around, but it's so much more like designing an interaction outside of a screen. So I was curious if you could talk a little bit more about the actual process that you go through of kind of figuring out what works and what doesn't.
Yeah, I think for at least Wyndham's example, I think we have a lot of people that did come from Disney. Being in Orlando, I think it makes it a lot easier to be able to to use some of that knowledge that they've kind of done through years of their own research and their own operations teams. So I'm not going to take a lot of credit for that, just because that was a little bit on the higher end of my pay scale. But I think that was done in a very intentional way to just put something out there quickly. It really is the same as those tap cards that you get from a hotel, but with the idea was, okay, how can we make this less touch? I'm making it, and so having people that have worked at Disney before, and having that knowledge of how simple it is, and how their users love those magic bands, and using them without having to take a wallet out to pay for anything, or take a key out to get into their rooms. So seeing that behavior was kind of just like a translation of what we needed to do. So a lot of people, and it's been even something that was in flight prior. We were talking about putting it into the app, so that building, so right now we have a mobile site, but creating an app version of that site with all the same functionality, but adding that keyless entry, for a user. So we had talked about keyless entry for a while. So there was a lot of research done into it. We had a lot of kind of pre-work done to it. It just kind of sped up the process. So like everything else, it's just we need to get some more safety measures for our guests. We want to make sure our guests are safe, and we want to make sure they feel comfortable. So the thought process was really just let's get one of these kind of systems that we can implement quickly and agilely and make it seamless for our guests. So that's really what it is. But yeah, I'm more in the Pixel world myself. So yeah, it was definitely it's definitely interesting to see how things like that. And at Disney, they've been working on that touch-free and contactless realm for a while. So I've seen a good amount of processes that they have there, which were really interesting.
And you may not have insight into this, but I'm curious if you know why they decided to go with the band as opposed to, like, I think Hilton, for example, you can download their app and just use your phone. It connects, I think, through Bluetooth maybe, to open your door. And I'm just curious if you know why they made the decision one way or the other.
Yeah, so we're still early on in our digital transformation. So we've been talking about creating an app. Right now we have a mobile site, so it doesn't have the capability to do that. So if we were to kind of focus on creating a native app, that would be something that would definitely be a part of it. But just the speed at which we had to create some sort of keyless entry feature was too great for implementing in an app. I think Hilton has an app. They're definitely a lot more forward thinking than we were, but now I think we have a team in place that can really take those kind of learnings from other companies and implement them in ours and make sure that they're made for our user. So we have an older user base. I think it's getting younger, but our older user base, I think, is more averse to downloading apps and things of that nature. So they're definitely still more on the using the desktop side. I think it's moving more towards the mobile, but we're still pretty early on in that process. So
I have a question, Ricardo. Hi, I'm Zarina. This is something outside of the travel industry. During the COVID-19, I posted on the Facebook in one of the groups and asking question, what are you the most have, struggles currently? And a lot of women answered that they have troubles with kids, especially staying home with kids. And that routine for them, how to handle it, how to work and kids and husband and everything. So I was looking at potential project for my study project, and I was thinking about, an app for kids, how to, do the routine for themselves and then get some rewards or something like that. But I wanted to ask you, what do you think? Do you think it's a possibility to explore, or do you think it's another, how some parents are against, kids using like screen time, or do you think it's like extra, they don't want extra engagement with the application? Like I was thinking like tablet application. So what do you think about that?
Well, I think it's worthwhile looking at. I think for us, I think every family is different. I know families that have had to, kind of put aside the device rules and just say, look, I have to work, and this is really the only way to do it. But for us, we're lucky that we have two kids that are that have always been more analog, and so they do a lot more drawing and things like that, and reading. So we're super lucky, but we're definitely more averse to having them on devices and technology. But to that end, I think there is definitely a place for applications that help with time management for kids and scheduling. I think scheduling is super important for families. I think now, basically every day, me and my wife almost have a stand up every morning and say, okay, I have this going on, this going on, this going on. These are my meetings. And then she tells me hers, and we kind of figure out a way to organize our time to be able to spend time with them, being able to make sure they're not just playing all day, and they're actually doing productive things. But yeah, scheduling, I think, is super important. So even if it isn't an app for the kids, but even if it is an app for the parents, to really be able to put their two schedules together and include possibly some activities in between. So maybe the app has recommendations of classes or recommendations of activities they can do. I think that would be great.
Yeah, I was just thinking not just to create something, but actually to be useful and helpful for those parents, because I saw the really struggle and really need. And also a lot of complaints were about, health, physical health, like they're not as active, they're not getting up. But even though I see that there is a lot of health applications out there already, but I didn't see much for kids, like actually to be active, to stay active. So that's why I was asked to, but thank you.
Yeah, no problem. And I think the next step is really just doing some research and user research, asking a lot of questions to parents, to kids, and understanding what their needs really are. So it really is kind of just taking that process forward and seeing if what the feasibility is of it. Is it something that people would be using? So I think it is. It's research and testing and prototyping, and I think it is kind of seeing what works. And you might end up with something completely different after it.
To add to that a little bit, so I have a pretty unique situation in that my husband actually has cancer right now. So we have a 4-year-old. And so we are trying to homeschool him while we're both working full time and trying to juggle chemo. So the kind of thing that you're talking about, Serena, would be extremely helpful for us, but not so much for our son. But something to help keep us on track with everything going on, to be able to track down what we should be switching to now. So my husband and I already did some switches in our schedule. I take 2 hours at lunch so that I have lunchtime with him, and I have some playtime that I interact with some of the socialization. I do some of the interaction with small objects and fine motor skills and those kinds of things with him during that time. And then my husband starts work really early so that he gets off at like 3, and then he can do some other activities with him at that point. But the rest of the time, he's pretty much watching TV, and not good for a 4-year-old, but unfortunately, that's what we have to do right now. So I really like your idea. And we have struggled to try to find resources to help us in this situation, because we also have a difficult time figuring out where should we even look. So just some additional feedback.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, I want to echo. My husband and I both work full time as well. We're actually both work at 352, and we're actually on the same project. So we're often in the same meetings. So it's not like one of us can easily hop out to watch the kids. So, we have a 3-year-old and a 5-year-old. So, they're not going to, do anything too crazy, but we can't leave them unattended for too long. And so I think something like this would be really helpful for us as well. If nothing else, to help stimulate ideas in us as to what we could be doing. There's an app, I can't remember the name of it, that I downloaded years ago when our oldest was like 6 months or so, and it was like different activities to do each day to build particular, parts of their brain. So the social parts and the spatial awareness parts, and moving their legs in particular ways. Like, it kind of was a free-form lesson plan on, for that age, what should they be doing? What should they be learning? What are some actual things that you can do? Not just like they should get some exercise, but try running laps, whatever it is. Giving very concrete examples of what they could be doing could be really, really helpful right now for parents, because I know I don't have the mental bandwidth to figure out what they should be doing.
Yeah.
There's just not enough hours in the day to figure it out.
I
This
hear
is,
you. Yeah.
that's the whole reason we sent them to preschool to begin with. So.
Yeah, exactly.
I'll jump in here too. I have a 14-year-old son, I'm sorry. And anybody who comes up with a shooter game that teaches SAT and ACT, I am totally buying it. And if it's on the Xbox, even better. So if you need an idea, that's
Nice.
my idea.
That's awesome. Roger, I know you had a question. Did you want to pop in?
Oh, thank you. Yeah, a great presentation, Ricardo. And just a little bit more back towards the software development side. I just wonder if you have seen any changes in terms of the tools that you're using to develop those UI interface, and how you guys had adopted to the more remote, that we are doing these days. And thank you.
No problem. No, so our team, we're in a weird situation because our IT team isn't really, now it is, but when I first started, they weren't integrated with our the digital team. So we had our own kind of IT team that was separate from the main IT team, but the main IT team is really the one that drove what kind of products we could use, and how we could do it. And thankfully, since COVID happened, which is it has been a good thing for us. They've basically come together now. They're all under our team. We're all together as one team, which is great. So a lot of things that have been happening are really opening up tools that we have been begging for since the beginning of what we were. We didn't have we had our own Git, but it was localized. It wasn't in the cloud. So our team had a really hard time collaborating at the beginning. And so we were able to get that implemented thankfully, before COVID. But then a lot of other applications have really come. So we design on a platform, a framework called Zurb. It's similar to Bootstrap, which is super ubiquitous right now. It's just a design framework that has a set of components that are customizable and can really scale throughout the whole organization. It's similar to that. It just works better we use AEM, which is Adobe Experience Manager, as our content management system and our it's kind of our everything for our producers to create our sites and to populate it with content. So it works better with Zurb. So that's why we're working with that. But to answer your question, really not a whole lot has changed, I think, for our team. It's just they've been given more freedom to collaborate and work remote since COVID, just because of the situation. I think before it was our IT team was a little bit more backwards, and was legacy and very waterfall. So they've had to kind of change with the times, which has been great for us because we were already pushing them in that direction.
We've had a similar kind of decentralization of the way that we developed. So it used to be, you had to be either, on the local, Wi-Fi to connect to everything, or you had to VPN in. And so since then, we've had to reduce some of our security requirements, which is not ideal. But with the entire team of, 28 people or so working on our project, it just wasn't, and all of us working remotely from different parts of the country, it just didn't make sense anymore. So we definitely had to make that trade-off and, put everything on the cloud as much as possible and open up our various security levels.
Yeah, and I think a lot of those security hurdles are more kind of self-inflicted. I think a lot of the new cloud technologies have very robust and probably even more robust security measures than having everything local and having everything through VPN. I think that the reality is that that is more this kind of old school mentality that if it's here in the building, it's safer. When some of these larger cloud-based platforms have been doing it with giant corporations like Google and Amazon, who somehow figure out a way to keep it very safe.
I had a design thinking framework question, Ricardo, and thank you for the presentation tonight. It was great. Just kind of, could you speak to your experience kind of using any particular design thinking framework in an Agile shop, whether it's one from D School or IDEO, or even like we've experimented at where I work with IBM design thinking, their framework, with some success. We've made some changes here and there. Just curious if you could speak to what you've tried in the past, what's worked, what hasn't.
Yeah, yeah. I think I've kind of piecemealed it, and which probably not the best way to do it. I think everyone kind of has to take what works for them. But I've taken courses with the IBM design thinking methodology and framework, just because it's a little bit more on the inexpensive side. And I like it. I like how but all of them have the same similar principles, and I think that as long as you're following those principles and you're really engaged in what those are, I think that's the important thing. But definitely with what's happening, it is something that I've been looking into, doing more self-education and going into possibly. I have a friend that always regretted never doing the Nielsen Norman Group certification, because he's I think he started it, but I can't remember exactly what it was. But he said, "I wish I would have just kind of finished that." But to that point, it is something that I've been really thinking about doing, is kind of investing in that myself, just to kind of build up my skills in that arena.
I think the IBM design thinking course is being offered for free currently while we're in COVID. So if anyone is looking for a good professional development, it's temporarily free.
Yeah, the first one was always free, the practitioner, and then there's one after that with your team, and that's also free, or at least it was up until, it might still be free. Yeah, it's good though.
Yeah.
Yeah, the director of product at Wyndham Destinations came from IBM before that, so he was at IBM Design. So he's a big proponent of their framework. So I would say that's been one of the big reasons why I've kind of stuck with that a little bit more. But yeah, he's great.
If you're I found that when I was kind of looking around for how to bring this into our organization, it paired really nicely with our Agile shop. So there's some parallels there, and it kind of talks about how you can weave it into Agile. And my team, I run a small product design team. We kind of we're maybe about a month to 2 months ahead of our development teams, kind of putting stuff in their pipeline, doing the prototyping, the experimenting, the UX work. So yeah, we've had some good success. Then kind of COVID hit, so things changed up a little bit. But yeah, it's been good for us.
I'm curious how things have changed on your team. Has it been for the better, for the worse, or just different?
So with the IBM methodology, you have these playbacks, these kind of where you bring people on site and you'll do like user journey mapping, some sort of card sorting exercises, kind of the regular. There's a couple tools in their toolbox, but a lot of these pretty common UX tools is kind of repurposed, repackaged with their methodology. There's been some challenges with doing that remotely. We've landed on doing it with Zoom, running, like take card sorting, for example. We use Envision Freehand. And they've recently, I think as a response to this, they've patched in like sticky notes into their freehand. So everyone can grab a sticky note, and it's a pretty robust virtual whiteboard. So, that's it. It's not as good as being in person, but it's pretty good for being online, is what I would say.
We use Optimal Workshop for card sorting too. It doesn't give you the opportunity to kind of listen to them or kind of, watch how they're kind of thinking through it, but it does give you the end result. So yeah. we use that a lot for card sorting remotely. Yeah, for us, we were already working remotely, but when COVID hit, I was literally like, when everything started going on lockdown was the week that I did in-person interviews in Orlando. And so it was a close call there for a little while, but that was the last time we did in person. And, we were doing IDIs, we were in-depth interviews, we were doing usability testing, and we've had to switch completely to remote, which is fine because most of my career has been doing unmoderated testing and using systems like user testing and Userlytics, things like that, to kind of do that unmoderated remote testing anyway. But I've had to do a lot more remote interviews and that kind of thing, which has been challenging, but certainly doable. I've had a good experience so far with Userlytics, trying to do a combination of different types of studies. So normally I would run a diary study and I would, send out surveys to the people. I would, watch their interactions through something like Full Story, and then do an exit interview, or maybe start, the diary study with an IDI slash usability study of their first time interaction. And we've had to switch completely to online. So it's been really interesting kind of seeing that. And then our product is in fintech. So, hearing how financially everybody's being impacted by COVID so differently. Some people, of course, a third of Americans or something crazy losing their jobs, even more than that, losing hours and income in various ways. And yet others are they're not making more money, but they're saving money because now they're not eating out all the time, and figuring out what are they going to do with the surplus of money that they've realized that they have, because they have secure jobs and that kind of thing. So it's been really interesting seeing on the fintech side, seeing how people are starting to interact with their money very differently, because of COVID and the various implications that has.
That is interesting. How has that change the way that you guys are working on the product itself? So like seeing the user behavior change as in flight almost, as you guys have already made decisions and kind of made choices because of different user behavior that was happening 6 months ago. How is that happening?
So unfortunately, so I work in an agency, but we're working with an internal enterprise team. And so we have a lot of bureaucracy to go through. So not a lot has changed in 4 months, sadly. But we're starting to pivot a little bit more and saying, okay, we've seen that the need has changed. How do we match that now? We're in the middle of a diary study right now and figuring out, okay, what are the things that people are truly running into? What are their main situations right now that we need to account for? And seeing it in a more real-time situation, because in the past we were doing, just one-off IDIs or, interviews with live users, but doing it as a diary study, we've been able to touch base with them each week and see how it changes for them every week. I'm a big fan of diary studies. So it's, I think, given us a little bit more ammunition to go to our stakeholders and say, okay, look, this is actually what's happening as they're using it, and as their finances change, we need to be able to accommodate XYZ things. So we're getting a little bit more leverage to be able to do those things, but it's just really slow. So it's the nature of the beast.
Yeah.
Especially in fintech.
Is there a digital tool that you use for your diary studies?
Right now I'm using Userlytics, which allows you to do IDIs of varying lengths. So I think the shortest is maybe 5 or 10 minutes, all the way up to an hour. And so you can do just normal usability studies through that, and you'll see their desktop as well as their mobile phone if you wanted to, if you were doing a mobile test. And then you can also do, they have in beta live interviews, which I'm going to be trying out next week. So we'll see how that goes. I guess check back September 1st at our next meetup. I'll let you know how it goes. Yeah, that's what we've been using for that. And the Userlytics support team has been awesome and really helping us get through this entire process of like figuring out how to run it. They've been very hands-on with us because I've needed a little hand-holding with the particular diary study because we have to keep calling back the same people, of course.
Right, yeah.
User testing also has the ability to call back users or participants. So that was my original plan, was to run it through that. But because of our desire to have a moderated exit interview, we really wanted to make sure that we could talk to them to do a deeper dive into some of the responses and that kind of thing. So, so we decided not to go that route. But if you could certainly do it that way. I've also run them in a way that you have to recruit through something, right? So you could use userinterviews.com to recruit. There's a million recruiting companies that we use as well. And then just send them a survey each week. And like I said, doing something like full story could be good. Lauren, are you at Greenway Health?
Yes, yeah.
Okay, yeah. So I don't know if you could do that because the health
Yeah.
systems, it might be a little weird, but for us, we can use something like Full Story, so we can actually watch their interactions, in conjunction with the survey's responses, and then do an exit interview just over Zoom or GoToMeeting or something. So that's the other way that I've done remote diary studies.
Thank you.
Yeah.
While not using it for diary studies, we've definitely kind of upped our game on Hotjar and Google Analytics. Just kind of digging into those more. Well, we had more time, but there was more information we wanted to learn that we weren't getting from on-site visits or otherwise. So it's been interesting.
We just started using Full Story about 3 months ago, and it's been life changing. It's pretty great. It's a great product.
You said it's called Full Story?
Yeah.
Okay.
You can basically put criteria down for any kind of user, any page, any type of thing like an error or anything like that, and you can see any user that's interactive with your site that has encountered that issue or encountered any page, and you can see how they're using it. It basically recreates the interaction. It doesn't film it. I think it just kind of recreates it, but it's super interesting.
Yeah, you can also combine it with I can't remember the specific one that we use, but on planningpoker.com that we developed, we actually have Full Story, and we couple it with our support ticket, or like our support messaging system, so people can actually contact support, and then we can like connect it to their Full Story entry, basically, so we can see what was going on. The other thing that's probably pertinent to you, Lauren, is that developers can also specify things to hide. So for example, names, birthdays, social security numbers, anything that's going to be a HIPAA violation,
Right.
you could probably hide that from the full screen. I'll call it a recorder. It's not a recorder, but the full screen,
Right.
interface, so that, there's not a violation there. So you might be able to get it into your system.
Would you find that a diary study would be an appropriate tool for gauging something like the learnability of a product that's not really supposed to be a walk up and use type system, but more of an enterprise software system where there is a learning curve, but then you want to see what the usability looks like after that initial learning curve?
Absolutely. The entire idea of a diary study is to see how the usability changes over time. Right? Everything else is held constant. The only variable is time. And so what happens, a month into using the product? So for example, in a system where, doctors are using this inputting method, there's a learning curve, right?
Right.
Over probably a week, they've figured out how to do most things. Well, what happens 2 weeks in? What happens a month in? By then they just need a notes section or whatever. You can get that feedback from people, usually what went well, what didn't, what do you wish it could do? How would you rate it? Kind of quick questionnaire. And you'd be surprised how much you get out of something as simple as that. But definitely, the whole idea is to measure change over time. In diary studies, how are you going to get that information? Because you will never get the same level of interaction in a single usability study. Like any one-off usability study, it will give you surface level stuff, and that's still valuable. But when you have a system that people are going to be interacting with long term, there are micro interactions that end up happening that you're not going to capture in that single interview.
Yeah, I think that's something that it's always a struggle with these kinds of applications. Is you can use user testing and it's incredible for the feedback and you learn a lot, but sometimes I'm left wondering, after the first couple of uses, how would this feedback change, or how would this,
Absolutely.
how fast would they be at performing this task? Just questions like that. So
yeah, I think it'd be great for you guys. Cool. Any other questions, thoughts, comments?
A quick question for all of you. So I know we talked earlier about how we have a need for more technology Is anyone finding any evidence, this is just a suspicion of mine, that some people, when they're losing their jobs, may lose their access to devices, internet, things that we depend on right now to do a lot of this tech may not be available for someone who has now lost their job. So, and I'm not sure people are comfortable going to a library or something in this situation in order to then utilize technology. Is there any evidence to show that people are actually doing some anti-tech when there's job loss situations or anything?
Uh, I haven't seen any research on that. I think there definitely will be. I think poverty is going to become more of an issue, and I think seeing, especially listening to the Orange County school board, just town halls, and how certain parents are don't have devices or don't have internet.
Yeah.
And so for them to be able to do full remote is virtually impossible. The school was able to provide devices for all kids. So anyone who needs a device can get a device, at least for now. But I think it is really going to be difficult. I think as we move further into the recession and we start seeing what real ramifications happen, what will happen with all these kind of tech advances and moving forward in technology. And I think it isn't that we need the tech, it's just it isn't that we need to move forward with tech. It's really that tech has facilitated a lot of our current behavior needs. And so yeah, I think that is a great question of what is going to happen if people are continue to lose their jobs and for a long period of time, and what kind of effect that has on them. Whether it's with device. I think even the poorest people are able to figure out a way to get some sort of device, whether it's a very cheap phone, because of the way the world is. They need some sort of way to communicate with people. But yeah, like reliable internet access is going to be a very difficult thing. So that's something that I think accessibility and simplifying interfaces is going to make super important. I think having giant images on an application or a site is not going to be beneficial for a lot of people. So really simplifying what that interface looks like, removing a lot of JavaScript that will slow down the site on non-broadband networks. I think things like that, really understanding how to make your product as available and as accessible as possible is going to be imperative. So yeah, I think that's a great point.
I think, and I can only say this anecdotally because I agree. I haven't seen any research out there, and I think that with the expiration of the updated, I don't remember if it was unemployment, but basically there's, all these people that were getting financial support from the government, it's about to end, right? Or it ended on the 31st, I believe.
Right.
So I think this coming month is when we're going to see, or even in the next 2 weeks, is when we're going to see that bigger financial impact on people. And we'll really start seeing the loss of connectivity for people. The other thing to keep in mind, and again, this is just anecdotal, is I know plenty of people who don't have a home computer. The only computer they have access to is at work. They have a smartphone, they have internet at home, they work from home. But if they lose their job, they have to turn that computer back, and they're not going to have an actual computer. They'll still have internet, they'll still have their phone, they'll still have an Xbox, whatever, but their actual laptop or computer is gone at that point. So, thinking about, things like infinite, people paying their bills, how do we, so Ricardo, Infinite Energy is a gas utility company.
It's a gas and electricity reseller.
Yeah, so thinking about people trying to pay their bill, you're going to have to be able to do it on both kinds of devices, right? Because they may not have a computer to do it from anymore, even if they have internet. So I think there's a lot of permutations that you have to kind of consider in all of this. So yeah, it's going to be an interesting thing to kind of watch over the next month or two. Or I hate to say interesting, but you get what I mean.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. And I think, you know, the reality is we shouldn't be in the situation that we're now in, where things are expiring and there's, you know, talk of you know, fighting over how much, you know, people get. You know, you see it working well in other countries where the government really does support, you know, the people that live in that country. So hopefully things will kind of turn around, and you know, we won't see the mass the mass poverty that could result in just prolonged unemployment. But you know, that is, it's empathy and you know, and having humans at your center. So I think, you know, if everyone thought that way, we wouldn't be in a situation like we are in now.
So I'm going to go ahead and call it, unless anybody has any very last questions that they're burning to ask. Okay. Ricardo, thank you so much for joining us today. I hope to see you again as a attendee. Our next meetup will be on September 1st. If you guys have anyone, or if you would like to speak at any of our upcoming meetups in the fall, please feel free to reach out to me or even Sue, and we will be happy to get you scheduled to speak. So Ricardo, if you know anybody in Orlando who would be interested, we're happy to have them.
Yeah,
So.
I'll reach out. Yeah, I'll reach out to my network and see if this is great. I love the discussion afterwards. So yeah, I think it was a really a refreshing meetup with a lot of good conversation.
Awesome. Cool. All right. Thanks,
Thank you.
everybody. Stay safe. Wash your
Thank you.
hands. Wear your masks. See you guys next time.
All right. Thank you.
Bye all.
Bye.